The fact is that narcissists can be really difficult to spot, and there are a number of reasons for it. One of which is the fact that they're not really showing you their true selves, at least not in the beginning of the relationship. But of course, if you stick around long enough for them to get comfortable with you, a shocking and upsetting thing happens. The mask comes right off and you see the true face of the narcissist. And listen, it is scary. How long did it take you to see the truth? You definitely saw it. You just might not have seen it in the moment. What I mean is that narcissists, of course, they hide this side of themselves up to a point at the beginning of the relationship. But at some point, everything changed. And in the course of that shift from the love bombing stage into the devalue and the discard phases of the relationship, which can all repeat many times, through the course of all of that, now as you look back in hindsight, you know that it was there. You can see the signs. And don't forget that narcissists keep us hooked with intermittent reinforcement. So this style of love, where they're kind of horrible to you intermittently with being amazing and maybe even the best person you could imagine, sometimes, at least for them, all that is intermittent reinforcement. Hindsight is always 20/20. We are going to talk about the narcissist false self, how it develops, and if you stick with me through the end of the video, I'm going to help you understand exactly what you're supposed to do with this information. When you're born, you express yourself through instinct. On so many levels, that is your true self. The fact is that as a human, your instinct is to live, and as a baby, that's all you've got. So you need to be fed, you need to be changed, and even cuddled every few hours. Now, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, but if your parents did the best they could and you were cared for properly, then you would automatically show your authentic self. But that doesn't always happen. For narcissists, they never show their true selves, at least not in public. In fact, most of the time, they are living through what I would call their false self. Now, don't get me wrong here. Just like you, the narcissist was born expressing him or herself through instinct as well. But if they were not nurtured properly and they were denied the things they needed, then they would develop a false self, and that's what we see today. The reason this happens is that when the infant is not given what they need and they are not nurtured in the way they need to be nurtured, they are on their way to being not authentic in any way at all. It is possible that one of their parents was a narcissist and that in that case, their needs wouldn't be met. They would have been given responses of disapproval over and over again, and if the child attempted to show them their authentic self, it would be shot down. Now, on the flip side, maybe they were overindulged and they lacked discipline and balance, and that can equally be damaging. I'm going to leave a link for you to a video in the description below to give you more information on attachment styles and how this happens. But in general, in most cases, somewhere along the way, the narcissist's authentic self was replaced by an artificial persona. As they grow up, they start to build a false set of relationships that are all based on this facade they're showing. But what purpose does the false self serve for the narcissist? Here's the thing. The false self is a protective mechanism that protects the narcissist as a child from feeling their dependency needs being unmet. So the false self blocks feelings of shame that the narcissist had from only having had conditional love from their parents. It's also a way to prevent them from remembering any trauma or shock that is associated with being abandoned, neglected, or abused. What are the characteristics of the false self? Well, those who are living through the false self can very often appear charming and well-mannered and polite. I know, right? But here's the thing. A lot of that is just completely phony or fake, as their facade does not really reveal who they actually are. On so many levels, the false self is the reason they don't feel any type of empathy, as all they cared about growing up was having their own needs met. And since that never happened during childhood, this kind of explains why they live in the false self. Because in so many ways, their authentic self is just not there anymore. It's empty, and they literally have nothing to offer. Now, if you wanted to understand why narcissists have an inflated ego, this might give you a clue. And they can be abusive if they don't get what they want and need. And now you can also see why the narcissist might go into fits of rage when they're feeling threatened or they're rubbed the wrong way. And you might also get why they're insecure and would never allow their true selves to come out, because they feel shame. This doesn't make any sense. Most of us have also been through our own types of abuse. So why is it that we don't hide behind the false self? What makes it okay for us to be authentic? The fact of the matter is we all have parts of ourselves that we show the world and parts that we don't. We can be as authentic as we want to be. Narcissists didn't start off being evil. They didn't start off being cruel and horrible and terrible. They started off as innocent children like everyone else. But through the course of their life, the way that the abuse manifested for a narcissist is different than the way it manifests for us. We We tend to become people pleasers. Many of us become more codependent. There are some studies that suggest that narcissists stayed focused on the fact that their needs weren't met, and in order to get them met, they began to focus inwardly on themselves. And that makes sense if you think about it from the perspective of a child. And unfortunately, narcissists typically have the emotional maturity of a child. Now, those of us who didn't turn out that way, who didn't live in the false self, who didn't turn inward, what we did is we turned outward. And what that means is that instead of loving people less and caring less about how people felt, we recognized that our safety depended on other people being happy. And so instead of focusing on what we couldn't control, instead of focusing on trying to change other people and force other people into positions they weren't comfortable in, we went the other way and we put ourselves in a position that wasn't comfortable because we figured if we could keep everybody happy around us, then we might not be hurt so much. But why is there so much confusion in toxic relationships? Seems illogical, right? Because if they're not empathetic, why would they even seek out relationships? Essentially, because the narcissist hides behind this sort of armor that is their false self, they fool you from very early on. Your first impression of the narcissist was probably a very good one in many cases, because they showed you only the best parts of themselves when you met. They showed you that false self, the construed qualities and traits that they present to the outside world. They make it really hard to see who they really are. I mean, you're stuck deciding whether you really got the sweet and charming love you signed up for, or whether the wool was pulled over your eyes and the real person is actually that abusive, insulting, manipulative narcissist you're dealing with in real life. Of course, this leads you to a serious kind of mental torture that causes you to literally become at odds with yourself. We call that cognitive dissonance. You're trying to reconcile the illusion that you were initially presented with versus the person you're now dealing with. In so many cases, in order to cope with this mess, you start trying to improve yourself, to change yourself for the narcissist. But in reality, you've done nothing wrong and you're not the issue at all. In fact, you're just subconsciously trying to uphold that initial impression you had of the narcissist. The image of the false self is challenged during the inevitable devaluation phase in a toxic relationship. And then by the time you get to the discard phase, also inevitable with a narcissistic person, by the way, the cycle, like the beat, goes on. You will be treated to glimpses of the truly ugly face of the narcissist. You know, the one that spews out cruel and painful poison that causes you to lose all faith in yourself faster than you can say boo? Yeah. And then you see the coldness, the callous indifference that leads to what feels like absolute torture for you. Well, your first reaction is that everyone has a bad moment and this can't possibly be who they really are, and that this is possibly the closest you're ever going to come to actually seeing the narcissist's real self. Yeah, well, this is about the time that you recognize that the amazingly charming or engaging or otherwise awesome person you got involved with in the first place is gone. Suddenly now you just see this horrible contempt that they seem to have for you. And when you realize that they felt that way all along, your heart breaks a little more, if that's even possible at this point. But what you have to realize here is that none of this is your fault. In reality, narcissists are simply not capable of feeling genuine love or empathy for anyone else. They just use people to meet their own selfish needs. Once they exhaust one source of supply, it's on to the next. Don't let yourself believe in that magical connection you once thought you had. It was just a part of the whole narcissistic cycle. An illusion. Just like the narcissist's entire identity. So now that you know all this, what are you going to do with it? What are you supposed to do with it? Well, you start picking up the pieces of yourself and you begin the healing process. You move forward. You go no contact if possible, or low contact if you're forced to deal with them, say as a coworker or a co-parent.
Question. When does the narcissist promise to be nice? Then their mask slips and their inner demon comes roaring out. Answer. Every day.
Every day.
Now it's time for the question of the day. And the question of the day is, what have your experiences been when it comes to the narcissist in your life and their identity? Share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your experiences in the comment section below, and let's talk about it. As always, thank you so much for being a part of my day and a part of my life. And hey, thanks for letting me be a part of yours. It really does mean a lot to me. Now, before I go, make sure you take a look at the videos I'm going to leave for you right there and right there. And while you're here, hit the subscribe button right over there so we can stay connected and continue on this healing journey together. I'll see you soon.